So this is my Godzilla minus one figure from Bandai SH Monster Arts, and it's a very nice figure. Some very thick legs. I wanted to see this movie a lot, but I wasn't. I didn't go to the theaters to watch it. I was going to buy it on Blu-ray or 4K, but it has come out on Netflix, so I have an account and watched it. Um, a lot of people were saying best Godzilla movie ever, 5 star, fantastic movie. So I went into it with really, really high expectations, and that may have been a mistake. So I'm going to go through, in my opinion, what are the pros, what are the cons, and what are just things that things that I noticed. So on the pros side, I liked that the movie focused on the human story, and that is where, in my opinion, the Legendary Pictures fail. I don't care about the characters in the Legendary Pictures films. They feel like they're written by a script writer. They don't feel real. I don't care what happens to them. These characters feel real. They feel likable. You don't want bad things to happen to them, unless they're not a nice character. But by and large, the characters are good people. It takes place in 1945 and 1946, right at the end of World War II. Japan has finally given up, and when we're introduced to the main character, he's a kamikaze pilot, and a kamikaze pilot is a pilot that is intended to use his plane like a human missile, like a missile, and just launch themselves. This is when in their final days of desperation, launch themselves into destroyer, battleship, whatever, committing suicide. And he decided the hell with that and flew off. He flew to an island where rather quickly that night they were attacked by this Godzilla, which is more like, I guess, a Godzillasaurus. Not like in the movies where it's basically a dinosaur. It's some kind of creature, but not nearly as big as this Godzilla. But it is it attacks and kills almost every member of this Japanese platoon. Also, the main character is treated very badly because he is a kamikaze pilot and he's still alive. And so the point of the kamikaze pilot is you kill yourself, and so he's seen as a coward. I think that the set designs are amazing, and the world feels real, and that, I think, really matters when you have a realistic world for Godzilla to occupy. Now, when I watched the trailers for the movie, I was amazed at how good Godzilla looked, because Toho, in the past, putting aside Shin Godzilla, they've been pretty terrible at CGI. But it looked amazing. And I was like, well, how in the world did they manage to make Godzilla look so good on a $10 to $12 million budget when Legendary Pictures is spending like 170 plus million to produce their movies? Well, first of all, Godzilla is actually not in the movie that much. There's the scene where he's walking through and destroying a city. There is the scene where he's in the water chasing after the boat, and then there's the final climax, and that's about it. So I don't know if it's was a matter of budget, or if they just wanted to not use Godzilla that much, which is the way Toho does it. Legendary, with their budget, they're just like, throw Godzilla in a ton, and I think it just takes away from the story. So I prefer Godzilla used sparingly. He should be the icing on the cake, not the cake. Now, here's the thing. The CGI in the movie does not look nearly as good as in the trailer. And the trailer clearly picked... It's not that those aren't in the movie, but they were careful to get the best of the CGI, because there's a lot of CGI that isn't nearly as good. It is a real mixed bag, and I will say that the dodgy CGI really kind of takes me out of the movie, because then Godzilla seems, it's like you have such a realistic world, and then there's Godzilla, who doesn't look realistic, and so it's a bit of a problem for me. I really wish they did have the budget to produce a extremely realistic looking Godzilla. And I'm going to say that, so here's Shin Godzilla. Shin Godzilla felt more real to me. The CGI did have issues in there also, but it felt more real. The story felt more real. Even though the story wasn't, I wouldn't say it was as compelling. It's just the whole story of Shin Godzilla is basically Shin Godzilla's attacks, and they need to figure out how to stop this thing. Whereas there was a separate story in Godzilla Minus One with characters, with memorable characters. Um, there's problems with pacing. So, for instance, the original Godzilla, this much smaller version, just kind of comes out of nowhere and attacks this platoon. And then later on, a lot of the Godzilla movies do a really good job of introducing or reintroducing Godzilla. This one doesn't. And it's a little bit disappointing. He just kind of wanders in. And I'm thinking of, various movies where they really, when Godzilla is reintroduced, it's kind of a spine tingling moment. This wasn't one of them. I didn't like the fact that Godzilla has this super healing ability. At one point in the movie, he takes a landmine to the face, or not a landmine, but a mine in the ocean, and it just blows half his face off, and it heals up almost immediately. In fact, overall, this Godzilla is the most overpowered I think I've ever seen in a Godzilla. And I thought Shin Godzilla was amazingly overpowered. But it feels like when you're gonna put this movie in the mid 1940s, I would say why not reduce him rather than make him ridiculously powerful. And his atomic breath, I thought the atomic breath in Shin Godzilla was the most devastating I've ever seen. It's nothing compared to Godzilla Minus One's atomic breath, which is literally an atomic bomb. It's just boom. At one point, he launches it at this city, and the devastation is beyond belief. And it looks good. That I will say. The CGI in that is, I don't know if it's a mixture of CGI and practical effects, but it looks good. But holy mackerel, this Godzilla is devastating. I don't think the story in this is as good as the story in the original 1954 Godzilla, something like that. That one had a very poignant ending. Dr. Shirazawa commits suicide because he has the knowledge in his head of the oxygen destroyer, and he doesn't want anyone to get that knowledge because the weapon is too devastating. So he destroys all of his research, but then commits suicide as he's destroying Godzilla in order to protect the planet. This one, spoiler alert, has a very happy ending. Everything works out. So, I mean, it's hard to say. Yeah, I want a downbeat ending, but it's not just that it was a happy ending. It's that I accepted that a character had died, and then in the last scene we discover, oh, the character didn't die, and it's like, really, okay. It just kind of it. I felt the story. It took away some of the impact of the story. I also, it's kind of like, what is Godzilla supposed to represent in this movie? Because in the past it's always been it represents the misuse of atomic power, and I know it's always been a problem, which is that Godzilla was basically created by atomic testing by the U.S. government. So why does he hate Japan? Why is he attacking Japan? Why is Japan the focus of Godzilla's anger? But here it almost seems like it's even more so, because they could have. Japan did some pretty horrible things in World War II, and it almost feels like if Godzilla was there to as their penitence for what happened in World War II, what Japan did, but I don't think the Japanese are ready to go to that level. So he really doesn't, in my opinion, represent much of anything except just a creature of destruction. And I wish it could have been more. And so I would say this: it is a very good Godzilla movie. The things it does well, which is characters, story mostly, and just the scenes, the show of Japan post World War II and the destruction and then the rebuilding. Where I think it fails is the CGI, which I understand it's a budgetary limitation, but it's the contrast between the well done backgrounds, set design, and the problem with Godzilla not looking particularly realistic, in my opinion. If the movie come out 10, 15 years ago, yeah, it would have been fantastic. But I will say this: there are parts in there where I don't think Godzilla looks a whole lot better than the CGI in Jurassic Park. Maybe I'm colorizing the past, but it definitely is a mixed bag. So I would, going into the movie, my suggestion is, if you haven't seen it, temper your expectations. You probably will enjoy it more if you're not expecting the greatest thing in history. It's a good movie. I enjoy it more than I've enjoyed the legendary picture movies, but it's not the greatest. I would put it in the top 3, 5, whatever Godzilla movies, but it's not my favorite. So anyway, that's my take on Godzilla -1.